rectangles. So the curvilinear grid is very much the same as the regular grid. So I'm not going to say much about it, except that instead of having straight lines, you can make it curved as the way you want it. It doesn't have to be orthogonal curvilinear. It can be curvilinear non-orthogonal. And what I'm going to talk a bit about here is what's done on the triangle mesh. So it was actually fairly straightforward to introduce that in WaveWatch, because since the spatial propagation is completely decoupled from the time integration of the source terms and the reflection, it's just a matter of when you're calling the propagation routines, it's just a different routine from the regular grid, so we just call a different routine. And actually, the data structure in WaveWatch, it doesn't have a grid built into it. If you actually look at the code, you will see that the spectra are given on a very long vector. So they not have a IAJ. It's not a 2D array, and so it's very easy to map this 1D vector to a 2D array on a regular grid or to a triangle mesh. So that was straightforward. So it's just one place of the call of the code in W3 WaveMD. Instead of calling the attraction on the regular grid, it's calling the attraction for the triangles. So the schemes that were introduced in WaveWatch for working on the triangles are based on contour residual distribution, and that was adapted for the wave action equation by Aaron Roland. That was part of his PhD work, and I've been working with him to put that in WaveWatch after that. And so this slide essentially gives some details about what we had in the paper this year in Ocean Dynamics by Roland and myself on the trade-offs and practical issues that you have in coastal applications. So again, yeah, our action equation is this thing with source on the right-hand side. So this I already told you. There are several ways to integrate this. This is what I was doing during my PhDs. I was using ray tracing, so you could actually have one node of your computation, and then you go back in time and you follow the trajectories of the wave packets. But then you need to put in the source term, so you can integrate the source term by doing some interpolation in space. The issue is that if your rays are changing in time with currents, it can be a bit problematic because you have to recompute them. This is what is done in Tomahawk, but in Tomahawk, they only do it one time step. And in my stuff, I was actually doing multiple time steps. So in Tomahawk, the integrated rays of one time step and only use the source terms locally, which is I think a good compromise, especially when you have the rays that are changing in time. So you can do it in a Lagrangian way, or you can do it with some numerical techniques on finite elements or finite volumes and this kind of things. So this is our wave action equation. Again, this is a advection in space. So we have the group speed and the current moving things around. This is a advection in spectral space. So that's the rate of change of the, now you know this, that the waves turn around. So that's the rate at which the wave turn. And so this is, if this stuff gets bigger than the time step, this is where there's a limiter kicking in. So if you want to check the values of these things, and this is done somewhere. I think I'm pretty sure that in WaveWatch we coded up something to output the TFL conditions for that. And of course, the alternative would be have some pair resolving, but I'm not going to talk about that. What was done with the regular grids is to do these mosaic things, so you can have different grids interacting together, and this is just what I mentioned. And the mesh, okay, and we're getting there. All right. So basically, that's the idea of the splitting. So we're first integrating this equation with source terms set to 0. Okay. Then we're integrating the source terms. Right? And so this didn't change. It's the same thing we've done for the regular grids or the triangle meshes. It's the same splitting operation. And then the left-hand side, there's a spectral advection part and the spatial part, and what's done in WaveWatch is actually to split these two. In Tomahawk, they're actually combined because there's a ray tracing combine both space and spectral changes. But in WaveWatch, it's split also in the spatial and spectral advection schemes. And And all right, so the way we deal with the triangle meshes is that essentially you have a cloud of points, which are these small black circles here, the nodes of your grid. And then there's a structure of triangles. So the grid is called, some people call it unstructured, but there is a structure, and the structure is a mesh of triangles. And so, for example, this node here is associated to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 triangles, something like that. And essentially, what's done to update the value of the spectrum at the node is to compute the fluxes coming into this cell. So this gray area here is called the median dwell cell, and so we are computing the fluxes coming in, and based on this incoming flux, we will change the energy at the node. And that's the basic idea of the residual distribution schemes, and there are several higher order and lower order schemes for doing this. You can do it implicit or explicit. And basically that's the flux of your action, and we're bringing this flux, so the flux all along this boundary, and this is what will change the action. So there are two important theoretical aspects to this. First one is the Godunov theorem, that if you have a linear scheme, it cannot be both monotone and high order. So monotone means that if you have something which is just growing, it will keep growing. If it's not monotone, you can introduce some wiggles, and these wiggles can be nasty, and sometimes they can even give you some negative energy, because the scheme doesn't know that energy is just attracting something. And of course, we would like to have it high order to have it more accurate, and so that's one problem. And the other issue is the Lac theorem, is that the scheme is convergent if it's stable and consistent, and so there's a consequence of that is that the implicit schemes if you want to have an implicit scheme, it must be nonlinear. And if you want to have accurate, it must be nonlinear. Okay, but the problem that it becomes non-monotone, and then the issue with that is that you may have some wiggles or sometimes some negative energies, and you have some issues in dealing with that. And that's typically one of the issues we face in SWAN. In order to integrate things with large time steps, you want to use implicit schemes, and if you want to make it accurate, then use high order, and then that will introduce some wiggles. And the way it's done in SWAN, actually they renormalize the spectra by redistributing the energy in directions. And so that, in many cases, that can actually make your spectra broader in directions because of this renormalization of the spectrum to avoid the non-monotone effects of the implicit schemes. So the one easy solution is to you work with explicit schemes, but of course then you have to pay the price of the TFL condition, and you have to have a small time step. All right, so if you actually take a simple thing with an interaction scheme, so you imagine you have a tracer in blue here, so it's 1 here and 0 outside, and this is a solid rotation field, so that essentially in the washing machine, with a solid washing machine, so stuff will go around, right? So you expect that your blob in blue will go around as you integrate in time. And if you're using something which is high order implicit schemes, after one turn, and of course a fairly big time step, you start to develop some so I think the white here is possibly negative and the blue is positive or something like that. So you get something which is in the right place, but it diffuses a bit around, and you get the negative values. So here, see the with a TFL equal to 1 or TFL equal to 1/2, the minimum value and maximum value. So the minimum value should be 0 and the maximum value should be 1. And it's not quite 0 and 1, so it can be negative and larger than 1. because the scheme is not monotone. The mesh, yeah, the mesh is the points is that thing. That's the mesh. Of course, it depends on the resolution, yeah, because it's a TFL resolution. All right, and the alternative is to use something which is more diffusive or to smooth stuff around. So there are different options. All right, and it's typically the kind of stuff that we use in WaveWatch. So it goes from the N scheme, which is a narrow stencil CRD scheme, and that's I think it's the explicit one. And so you see, you start from 0 and 1. Maximum, and after one turn, the maximum is only reduced to 1/2. So you diffuse your patch quite a bit in the long flow direction. And then there's what's called also in Wave. There's a PSI scheme, the positive stream invariant, which is high order, and so it's a bit better. And there's also flux correction transport scheme, which Aaron likes very much. So here that gives this solution here. And it's using a TFL equal to 1, so it's right at the limit of stability for the implicit schemes, for the explicit schemes. So you would say that, well, okay, this may be the good solution. In practice, yeah, I guess I'll have some other things about that. And then several flavors, different schemes that have been tested. And so so going back to this, so essentially what we have in WaveWatch is this N scheme, the PSI scheme, and the FTP scheme. This one is the cheapest one. The cost of that one is about factor 2, and then maybe back to factor 3 compared to this one. And actually, in all applications, we've stuck with this one because we're starting to get some issues with Gardner-Sprinkler effects, and especially looking at the wave models around the Guadeloupe and the West Indies. So it's deep water, and you have the mesh around the island. And if you're actually attracting energy with this high order scheme, you get these beams of energy in the actual digitization component. So actually having some diffusion can help for correcting for this problem. So we actually stuck with the N scheme, and we're getting some good results with that. So but of course, Aaron doesn't like that. That's his choice. But we could have something cheaper, and it seems to be giving good results too. So. All right, so that's some examples of what happens, the test case I was playing with. So here you have, that's the mesh. You have the symmetry. Oh, no, that's the, what is it? Yeah, it's cut out. Essentially, you have waves coming at an angle. So you have the boundary here. The waves are coming towards the shelf. This is shallow water. This is deep water here. And so as the waves go on the shelf break, they should turn around. And so the mean direction is fairly easy to get, but an interesting property to try to get there is a directional spreading. So directional spreading offshore is 15 degrees, and you expect that refraction waves will almost be all in the same direction, so directional spreading should go down. All right, and so this is actually the bathymetry. So now it's split the other way, so that's deep water, shallow water. So the waves will be coming from here to there, and the directional spreading should be what is it? Yeah, going from about 14 degrees down to 4 degrees, and it's using ray tracing, so you get that solution. If you instead of using ray tracing, so these are different symbols or different schemes where different ray tracing, different number of time steps, and then you also have using first order upwind scheme, and because of the diffusion, as you're attracting the waves from shallow water, from water to shallow water, the waves will turn around, and because of the bumps on the bottom, they turn one way and then they turn back the other way. And if you have diffusion in your scheme, then they will not turn exactly the right way, and so you'll get an increase in directional spreading, and your spectrum becomes shorter. And so this is what you have here. So these are integrations with upwind schemes with different number, essentially different TFL conditions and different resolutions. So it goes from what is it? The top lines here. So the dashed line here is 2-kilometer resolution upwind scheme, and then when you actually reduce the spatial resolution, so you go from 2 kilometer to 200 meters, you actually increase the error by getting better spatial resolution. And this is because you don't have a consistent spatial and spectral resolution. In order to converge, you have to actually reduce the spatial resolution and the directional resolution. And to get it right here, this was using, I think, 5-degree resolution. You need to go to a couple of degrees of resolution, right? So this, in terms of directional spreading, it's not very good. So we tested that with all the schemes, that's in Swan or WaveWatch, and typically you get this kind of stuff that it goes from 15 degrees or it goes down a bit. So that I think that should be the right solution with ray tracing. And so what you have here is essentially the schemes within WaveWatch, the SCT scheme on this mesh. The blue line here is a 2-kilometer resolution high order scheme in Swan, and the green one is the first order scheme in Swan. And so this is 2-kilometer resolution, this is 1-kilometer resolution, and this is 500-meter resolution. And you can see that the errors actually increase as you go from 2-kilometer to 500-meter resolution, because what you should do is to also reduce the spectral resolution. And it's a bit of effect also with the FCT scheme, but it's slightly better than what you have with the other schemes here. And yeah, I'm not going to go too much into details, but what the slide I have next is also to show you the impact of the splitting errors. And so with the fact that we're integrating this equation in parts, you have two splitting errors. You have one splitting error between the geographical advection and the source terms. And the typical case is you imagine you have a bar and shallow water, and the waves are coming over the bar, and you expect them to break over this bar. But if you do many time steps of advection in time, you're putting the waves going all over the bar, so you can have the waves jump over the bar, they don't see the bar, and you're computing the braking after the bar, of course, they don't break there. So you have missed the braking that should happen during the propagation because you've been advecting too much and you haven't done the source terms with the same time step. So that's one splitting effect you can have. Another splitting errors is between the geographical space and the spectral advection. And what I was showing before is a bit related to that. So if you actually have the waves advecting spatially and they should turn around, you have to do that. If you don't do that with the same time step, you can have something which is a bit funny. And so actually in the stuff that I was showing you before, in one it's integrated with the same time step, but because the refraction it has a time scale which is faster than the advection, it's not enough to do it with the same time step. You actually it's better to have a time step for each, or you should actually have a time step which is small enough for the two processes. So it's there's an error if you do the splitting, but there is also an error if you don't do the splitting because of natural time scales of the different terms of the equation. All right, and so these are some cases of that. So that's one case with wave heights here, and you get a bar, so the waves are breaking over the bar. So that's the wave height. This is the depth, and you see here the results of integration here with a small time step of 0.005 seconds. Right, this is laboratory scale, and so of course the time step is very small, so it's 40 meters here. Only a couple meters. So that should be the right solution. Typically, the wave height goes down and then it's stable after the bar. If you integrate that with a bigger time step, 1 second, so factor 200 larger. So you get one solution here for the explicit scheme and another one here with the implicit scheme. With implicit is green and explicit is red. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, the real solution was the blue, and you get these kind of things. And so at the end, with the explicit scheme, you're getting something which is closely beyond the bar. It's okay, but there's a shift here at the beginning because essentially there's this mismatch between the fact that you've advected the waves too much, and you're only computing the dissipation after they've been advected, and so that's what's happening. Another example of, so this is an example. This is a mesh. It is a bathymetry that goes with it. This is an elliptical shoal case of the Vincent and Briggs experiment. It's a case that was used a lot to look at diffraction and refraction effects in shallow water. So the waves go from the bottom, from the here to there, and they're shoal over the bar, and they get refracted behind the bar. And if you make the difference between the solution with a very small time step and the numerical solution, this is what you get with different schemes, and that illustrates a bit the splitting errors. And this is using the N scheme with the splitting error, and the difference here is compared to the full solution is about 5%. If you use the implicit scheme, and so that's going to be a big time step, then you have some errors, which actually are much bigger, about 25%. And if you integrate that with SWAN, you also get some errors, and they are actually comparable to the implicit scheme with a big time step here. And that's a low order scheme in SWAN, that's high order one. Yeah. It would be something, yeah, it would be, the error would be much lower, yeah. I should give you the numbers. Yeah, here there's 10 subcycles for the number of small steps compared to the large step is factor 10. So here, what's happening with the explicit schemes, you have 10 steps for spatial integration, and then you have the source terms, and then on the implicit scheme, you're actually doing this instead of 10 steps, you do just one, and of course, you get some errors. And that's one example with one of the test cases which come with SWAN, which is a Herring Glitch estuary. So that's the mesh, that is depth, and so you get a bar in shallow water, and that's typically the impact. So what's happening introducing SWAN on the social grid is to also put some limiter on the refraction because they were having some problems. If you have very steep slopes, then the model errors can be very large. So in order to reduce these errors, they have to introduce a limiter on the refraction term. That was done especially for the working with triangle meshes. And this is typically the errors that you have due to the limiter. This is the difference in percent, so that's minus 10% plus 10% on the wave height due to the introduction of the limiter in SWAN. So if you run with very small time steps without the limiter, or you run it with a typical time step with a limiter, you get this kind of effect. And so it turns out that in the end, the effect of the limiter, for example, which is in SWAN on refraction, is actually not very different from the effect of the splitting errors that we have in WaveWatch. So it's an interesting result. And then, of course, what I didn't address here is a CPU time, so I don't have the time for that. I think they may be comparable, but you may want to test it yourself. You just run SWAN in WaveWatch and see what happens. You get a feeling for that. So you basically have the choice of either having some implicit iterative direct methods, which is typically what's done in SWAN, or having some operator splitting, which is done in WaveWatch to split the equation. So if you with the implicit iterative direct method, the way it's done in SWAN, you have solving for the whole equation at once, with both the source terms and the advection. You can use some low-order diffusive linear implicit schemes like BSBT, and this actually the fact that it's low order is good because it can be monotone, so you don't have wiggles developing. But then it's because it's a lower order, it's more diffusive. The other option is to use a high-order scheme, but then if it's implicit, it's non-monotone, and it will introduce some wiggles, and you have to do something about it. So in SWAN, they have this renormalization. So they move the energy around in directions to at least get rid of the negative energy that could develop otherwise sometimes. And an advantage of that solution is that the solution can converge and independently of the integration time step. Of course, one problem of that is a strong numerical diffusion, and this is what was illustrated with the increase of directional spreading in this case in shallow water. So that can be problematic sometimes. The other issue that you have with this solution is that you have a limiter, okay, and that's needed for because all not nonlinear solutions can be properly linearized, right? And so on the left-hand side of the equation, in order to integrate that in a stable way, you need some limiter, right? And with the limiter actually introduces the limiter on full integration. It actually can also limit the propagation part. So that's you have to be careful about that. And that introduces some inconsistencies, and because of that inconsistency, you cannot guarantee that the scheme will converge. So if you make a small time step, there's not a guarantee that you actually converge to the true solution. And so one way to go around this problem is to what was done by André van der Stuyven, part of his thesis, is to apply some under-relaxation. Essentially, you change your criteria condition to, instead of shooting for the true solution, you shoot for a solution which is not close to it, and which is close to it but not exactly the true solution. That actually converges faster. And it was done in Q1. So the other approach is of the operational splitting methods is what's done in WaveWatch. So in most cases, you can actually have a consistent solution that converges with small time steps. The fact that you have an adaptive source term integration, the limiter only applies to the source term, not to the full equation. So I think that's a nice property. But of course, one big advantage of is that you have splitting errors. So you have to be careful that you have the small time steps of the source term and the big global time step. How big is that splitting errors, and you have to be careful about that. So you may want to try different time steps and see what happens. And that's pretty much the story. So there's no perfect solution. What Aaron is working on these days is actually implicit integration of the full equation with the source terms and the advection. Yeah, so they're still work in progress. And so right now we're the issue of either having splitting errors as we do in WaveWatch, or having some inconsistencies in the integration the way it's done in Swan. And I don't think we have a perfect solution yet. And then the practical thing will be the CPU time, how long it takes. And so sometimes you want to take some shortcuts and you get some solutions which will not be converged, but they may be good enough for your applications. So that's all I had about this numerical business. And so what's done with the triangles here is essentially a very logical way in way what you just in the advection part and everything is the same. So the time integration with the source term is the same. The refraction part is the same. And so this was just a few examples with some splitting errors. All right. Any questions? So I think what we'll do is have a break.